Hey everyone, Aaron here from MTGChallengers, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering deck tech. Today I'll be going over Selesnya Aggro for Born of the Gods Standard. So this is your typical green-white aggro deck. It has actually changed fairly significantly since the release of Born of the Gods. My build formerly leaned more green than white due to cards like Boon Satyr, but with the printing of Brimaz, any other creature in that slot has been utterly outclassed, and as a result the deck now has a greater dominance of white. So let's get started with the creatures. For my first one drop I have 4 Experiment 1. This is a pretty obvious choice still, since we do go all the way up to 5/5s. He can get very big very quickly, and the regeneration ability is really solid against decks with a lot of removal. My other one drop is Dryad Militant, 4 copies of it as well. It's a 2/1 for 1, shouldn't require much explanation. Rather than this card, some people run Soldier of the Pantheon in their green-white aggro decks. I personally think Militant is a little better for this deck due to the mana cost, as well as the fact that the Soldier's protection for multicolored actually messes things up a little for you, since you're not going to be able to target him with your Selesnya Charms or enchant him with Unflinching Courage, things like that. The protection works both ways. It's not like Hexproof where it only affects things your opponents control, so I feel that the Militant is just a little bit better here. So now on to the 2 drops. I have the standard playset of Voice of Resurgence. This card shouldn't require a whole lot of explanation at all. It's just fantastic. It disrupts control and aggro strategies by messing up the plays that they were going to do on my turn, or having 2 bodies in 1 to block their creatures. The tokens also synergize really nicely with Brimaz, as he pumps out a ton of creatures that are going to make that elemental token just massive. The other 2 drop I have in the deck is Fleecemane Lion, 4 copies of it as well. It's a really awesome creature, 3/3 for 2, with a very scary ability. What's good about it is that it forces your opponent to make a choice whenever you play him, since they know that if you get his monstrous off, he is not going anywhere. So they have to make the choice whether or not they just are going to let a 4/4 stay around forever, or they want to kill him right away. Even if you don't make him monstrous, he serves the purpose of drawing removal away from your more important creatures, like Brimaz. So now on to the 3 drops. The good old elephant is still big and bad as ever. Loxodon Smiter is another usual playset in decks like this. 3 mana 4/4 that's guaranteed to resolve. You just can't ask for much more than that in a creature. And he's also Thoughtseize proof, which can be really important in this meta. And the other 3 drop I have in here is of course Brimaz, King of Oreskos. This card is just nuts, and his inclusion in this deck as a 4/of makes it significantly better overall in my opinion. The 4 toughness is really awesome. It dodges Lightning Strike and Bile Blight, and he's a serious clock for your opponent. They just have to do something about him or they lose. And like I said before, the tokens synergize with Voice of Resurgence really well. So that's all the creatures. Now on to the other spells. I have 2 copies of Brave the Elements. Since the deck has taken on a more white weenie feel, I thought it would be good as a 2/of. You might not realize it, but every single creature in the deck is white, except for the Wurm tokens and Experiment 1, so you'll definitely be protecting most, if not all, of your creatures whenever you cast it, so it is still very good in this deck. And all those creatures will swing in unblockable, or board wipe your opponent since they'll have protection from their creatures, depending on how you choose to use it. Then I have a playset of Selesnya Charm. One of, if not the best constructed charms right now. Each mode is awesome. +2/+2 and Trample can be the final push to win the game. The Exile mode has gotten really good recently. With the increased play that Desecration Demon is seeing, that card is typically quite a problem for white-based aggro decks, but Selesnya Charm deals with it so well. It also deals with the gods really well because it exiles, so the indestructibility does not come into play there. And then you can flash in a 2/2 Knight with Vigilance, which is what I usually end up doing with the charm. You can just flash in a blocker, or just at the end of their turn if you don't have anything else to do. And of course I have the typical playset of Advent of the Wurm, which it's a spell, but it's really just another creature. 4 mana for a 5/5 Trampler at instant speed. The card's just insane. And it screws up control decks especially well, since you can just flash it in after they Supreme Verdict or any other kind of Wrath effect. And as for just the raw creature stats, other aggressive decks just can't compete with it. And then I have the last spell in the deck, Spear of Heliod, 3 copies of it. I felt that the deck would be awesome with a few of these, and it's downright unfair if you get it out with Brimaz going. Just pumps all your dudes, makes your Wurm 6/6s, and it provides some more removal in the main deck, which is pretty important. again, since Brimaz was coming in, the deck was going to take on a more white flare anyways, so I thought that a few of these could definitely improve the deck a lot. So now we're on to the mana base, 23 lands total, consisting of the 8 rare dual lands in green-white. Those are 4 Temple Garden and 4 Temple of Plenty. Then I have 2 copies of Mutavault. With the addition of Temple of Plenty, I felt the mana base was good enough to be able to support a couple copies of Mutavault. It's a great card in general, especially for aggro. It's just another creature that can swing in for more damage. And then I have 13 basics, and those break down into 7 plains and 6 forests. So that's it for the main deck. Let's take a look at the sideboard. First off, I have 3 Mistcutter Hydra. It's just an awesome creature to side in against blue decks. It basically removes every interaction that they have with it, and it will swing in the turn it comes into play, which is really nice. Then I have 2 Boon Satyr. These used to be in the main deck, but like I said before, he's just been outclassed by Brimaz in the 3-drop category, so he's now relegated to the sideboard, but he's still a fine card. It's mainly sided in against the control decks, since he's good against Supreme Verdict and other Wrath effects, whether it's to flash it in after they Wrath, or if it's bestowed on a creature, it'll just fall off and become a creature itself when the other one dies. I also have 1 more Brave the Elements up against things like Mono Black, decks that are running a lot of spot removal. It protects the vast majority of my creatures. And then I have 3 Unravel the Aether. It's just an awesome way to get rid of artifacts and enchantments. It gets rid of the gods with their indestructibility so well. Shuffling it back into their library is usually as good as just destroying it is, and it can actually be used to pseudo-save my Spears of Heliod. It's a bit fringe, but if they tear it or something, I can Unravel the Aether in response. Sure, it's probably going to stay gone, but it being back in my library definitely doesn't hurt. I have the usual 3 copies of Rootborn Defenses in the side. It's just a matter of personal preference. I always like to play 3 of them. Against the control decks, of course, with their Wrath effects like Supreme Verdict and Fated Retribution, and I can actually get another guy out of it, which is nice. And finally, I have 3 Unflinching Courage. This is mainly for the aggro mirror. It makes my Smiters and Brimazes huge, and I'll just gain tons and tons of life off of it, and they most likely will not be able to keep up. So that's it for this deck tech. Thank you all very much for watching. To see these decks in action, check out our gameplays, and also be sure to keep up with the other decks that we cover. Thanks for visiting, and if you like what you see, subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content.